was kind of a weird thing because I'd been like at Imperial and Top Quarter, I was like the Salesforce evangelist. So I was always running with you guys anyways. I was always hanging out with you guys and doing stuff together and getting previews for stuff. So I was kind of like an evangelist, but outside of Salesforce.
That is Jeff Douglas, a principal member of technical staff, Trailhead. I'm Josh Burke, your host for the Salesforce Developer Podcast. And here on the podcast, you'll hear stories and insights from developers for developers. Now, I want to take a quick pause because I don't know if you noticed this when you pulled up the episode, but this is episode 100. It's a huge landmark for us. I'm very proud that we got here. I want to thank everybody who has helped us and supported us along the way. And of course, that includes you, our faithful listeners. Thank you for listening and look forward to a lot more. If I'm being honest, I've actually had this interview with Jeff in my back pocket for a while, and I've kind of kept it for the special occasion. Jeff and I go back a long way, and of course, Trailhead is something special to my heart. So let's go to the interview where we start with Jeff's early days with computers.
With the computer, I remember I was in high school, probably in 10th grade. Like I said, I was the helper, the assistant in the computer class, and we were writing UCSD Pascal. And I remember writing a phone book application. You could enter someone's name and their phone number, their address, like that. I remember doing that and getting so excited and showing my dad. And he's like, "No one's ever going to use that. Just a phone book." I'm like, "Oh, Dad, thanks, man."
Oh my gosh! Wow. Your dad was like the anti-Bill Gates. Like Bill Gates was the one who's like, the internet will come to life when it's the thing you go to instead of. I think he might have actually used Yellow Pages as an example.
Yeah, that's my earliest memory. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so how'd you get introduced to Salesforce?
Oh, this is a great story, actually. So I was working in the SAP field, doing a lot of SAP implementations back in '99 when Java came out. We did a whole big integrated aspect with SAP and Java, everything like that. So we had a consulting company that did that, and so 2001 or 2002 when everything crashed. The .com crashed. I was looking for jobs. I was working at home for a nonprofit doing stuff. But I started looking for a job. And there was a company in my town that offered SAP consult. Or they said SAP shop. So I'm like, I'm going to get a job there. So I applied there and they had no jobs available. This is probably 2007. They had no jobs available for SAP. But they said, but we do have some Salesforce openings. And I'm like, what's a Salesforce thing? Let me check this out. So they said, do you know Salesforce? I was like, yeah, I know Salesforce. I'm awesome at Salesforce. So I had an interview in like 2 weeks. And so I crammed for Salesforce. And it was this is back before Apex. This is when everything was still JavaScript. Oh, no. And so it was a huge company. It's called Informa. And back then we had like 18 companies inside of one org. I got the job doing that. I did development for them. And every Friday, we'd have a 2-hour meeting. And honestly, it was called the pick list meeting because all we did was discuss pick lists and who had access to certain pick lists. And so that was the extent of that job, basically. So I did that about a year and a half. And that was when Apex came out. And I was working with our support rep on trying to figure out how Apex worked. And I started blogging. And I was just blogging what I was having problems with. I didn't want to get this huge blogging career ever. But I was like, okay, here's my problem. Here's what I'm doing. And here's how I solved it. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm just document this myself when I search for it 2 years from now and can't find my own solution. That's the reason I'm doing this. So, and then it got really popular. Then I left Informa. I went to work for Aperio and then just blew up from there. Nice.
And you've had multiple roles with the word evangelist in your title. And I just got to say that I think that's like, it's either a precursor or a requirement, but like that role, you will eventually Google yourself, not you, but you will Google your own solution for the problem that you were having that day. It's a very weird feeling.
Yeah. All the time. Yeah. I'm like, I did this 10 years ago. Why didn't I know how to do this? But the best part was we were back in 2012, I think, right before Dreamforce, Salesforce brought in like 10 Aperio consultants and 10 product managers from Salesforce. Adam Torman, Mary Scotton. There's a guy he's Sebastian. You know Sebastian? He's an Italian guy from the UK. So anyways, me and Torman are sitting there. Adam Torman, no one knows who he's a product manager with the best product manager of all time at Salesforce. Nicest guy too. We're sitting there programming this room with customers and Sebastian's Googling stuff and he's got my blog up. And I walked behind. I was like, oh, that guy's got a great blog. And he goes, yeah, do you know him?
Nice.
So that was really good. So
I love it. Now, you've also done a lot of interesting experiments with Salesforce, the platform in general, Apex, Alexa at one point. You were also tinkering around the time of the origins of Trailhead. You yourself were tinkering around with like how to self-check against the platform. Now, I'm guilty of doing that because I wanted to make our workshops better. But what was leading you down that path? Like, why was that kind of code of interest to you?
I thought it was pretty cool. I've always been into learning. It's like if I hadn't gone into technology, I would have been a history teacher, but it didn't pay very well. So that was the main reason. But I've always been interested in learning new things and kind of teaching. So we had this thing at Apero where we wanted to give, actually it was Apero Top Core at the time. So we wanted to give people free tickets into Dreamforce if they could solve these coding challenges with Apex. So we wrote this app online. So we'd say, okay, here is the class we want you to build. It has these inputs and we have these outputs. So you would do it all in the browser. You would hit submit. It would take your code, use a tooling API. It would deploy it to an org. It would deploy the unit tests that I'd already written. It would run everything and then bring it back and tell you if it passed. And that was a kind of cool thing I wanted to do. And so it was funny. That was the year that we as in you, as when I was back at Apero, released Trailhead. And I remember going to Dreamforce that year, and I had this big thing, and I was walking in, and Sandeep, who runs Trailhead, came up to me and goes, hey, he put his arm on me. Hey, I wanted to let you know, we got something that we're going to release. I didn't want you to hurt your feelings. It's very what you did, but it's a little thing we got called, I think it was called Medals of Time. I don't think it was Trailhead yet, but I didn't want to, irritate you about that. I was like, oh, cool. And I was like, oh, you guys just totally crushed my dreams, this Trailhead thing. So that was how that happened. So we had nixed that, but it's still a great thing. You just, take your code, use a tooling API and run stuff and get the results back. And that's kind of, as being the father of Trailhead, that's kind of how, the Trailhead stuff works. So,
I mean, it's one of the things that I learned, and I mean, even as an evangelist at the time, like when we just started coding challenges against like the REST API, I think Trailhead wouldn't exist, at least not in its current format, if like, I want to say it was about 2 years before Salesforce had this like API first philosophy. And it was like, if you can see it on a page or if an Apex class can touch it, it should be on the REST API somewhere. And so, because people would be like, can we write a challenge about like putting a button on a layout in the right place? And I'm like, of course we can't do that. How the hell am I going to ask the platform that? And then like 3 days later, I'm like, oh, it works. it just,
on that same
works.
note, I remember when we had the released a REST-based metadata API. Do you remember that? It was out for a couple of years. Yeah. And I went to, I was speaking at Dreamforce. I think it was the year that I think I spoke 10 sessions that year. And one of them, I was like, oh yeah, this is the new metadata API. It's all REST-based. And I was like, and my thinking is that, Salesforce is going to make this the preferred API over the SOAP-based metadata API. And man, the next day I caught hell from the product manager for that API. I had to retract everything. Oh man, it was great. But the whole API first thing is fantastic. Just look at the amount of transactions we have now. It's like, what is it? Up to billions a day. It's just
crazy.
Nuts. Yeah.
So first of all, I want to give you a shout out because I remember that Dreamforce and I also want to make it clear, you're not exaggerating. You had like, I think the number was 10 sessions that year.
Yeah, I think it was 10.
Yeah. And that Dreamforce was what took evangelism down the path of, we have to double check who's actually utilizing our speakers. Because I'm like, Jeff was speaking 10 times. We can't keep doing this to people.
Yeah, it burns you out. I mean, you've been on the forever too. I mean, Dave Carroll was great, which, I mean, you and I both probably owe our careers to Dave Carroll. Don't get me wrong, but he ran that thing really well, and it's a lot of work. It is a ton of work to speak on those things. I remember I got an award for, what was it? It was a Developer Hero Award one year. I think it was that same year. And I couldn't accept the Developer Hero Award because I was speaking in a topic. And so it was Adam Gross had to give it to one of our CEOs. Because I wasn't available.
Oh, gosh. Yes. Well, I thank you for your service. But yes, we learn not to burn out our speakers. And also, it's hard to enjoy Dreamforce when you're on stage that much.
It's tough. And then if you're not a Salesforce employee, like we were a consulting company, we had to speak and then go out and entertain customers that night too. So it's a lot of work.
You've got a job.
Yeah, I got a real job.
For work, right?
Right.
Well, okay, so then let's transition from that job to your current one / like, how did you join Salesforce itself? Like, what was that transition like?
I've been doing some on Top Coder, and I never asked anybody at Salesforce for a job. And I remember one year, like 2014, Dave Carroll said, it's funny, you guys from Imperial never get jobs at Salesforce. And so we just never did. And so one day I just reached out to him and one of the guys at Heroku, I think it was. Anyways, I can remember who it was. And I was like, hey, I'm just checking in. What do you guys have anything that's available? And I had just finished this really cool tutorial that I saw you do first. And it was the one with Amazon Alexa, where I think you did it from a shoe closet. Alexa and Salesforce came out. but I had done one. It was because you're like, oh, I got my Alexa today. Let's see what I can do. And you're like me, you're just hacking around, blah, 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 what I do. And I did it where you could ask Alexa for your calendar for today. You could create a new contact or a lead or something like that, and all kinds of things. It was kind of cool. And apparently, Mark Benioff saw that. I didn't know that. And so during the time when I'm talking to Adam Seligman, I emailed Adam Seligman and said, hey, looking for anything you got available there? He goes, let's see. Okay, we need to get you in the evangelism team. Let me talk to Dave and see if I'm available. Next day, he replies back and says, oh, Sandeep's got a position I think you might be interested in. Can you come in next week? So I flew in. I met with Adam Seligman. And it was funny because he interviewed me while he was sitting in a beanbag chair. It was really surreal. He's got my resume. He's sitting in the beanbag chair. He goes, "This is the weirdest interview I've ever done because I already know you and everybody here knows you. So this is kind of strange." And he gives me this piece of paper. He goes, "Hey, this is an email I got today from my boss where Mark Benioff sent an email through the chain of command to me saying that I should hire you based on this Alexa video." So it was really surreal, really surreal. Nice. So I met with Sandeep, and it was. That was the early days of Salesforce, of Trailhead, when it was all shared services. Because people who may not know that Trailhead started out as a shared service with marketing, and there was a lot of people on the team, but they're all half-time, quarter-time. And so I was the first person with Chris Duarte. So Chris ran the admin side of content development, and I ran the developer side of all that stuff. And I was going to do development and then write some developer content and help proof stuff. And so it was just us. And as you know, Trailhead was a shoestring project. So we're like, okay, how do we make this into a product? And it was just the three of us. So we're like, let's get some content out and get going. We're like, we released 4 badges this month. That's fantastic, And we would sit around a conference table and release new code and new content. So, but it was a great experience. I mean, just everybody at Salesforce is the nicest people in the world, and everybody's all about helping people get in this community and get better jobs and make Salesforce, the better environment. So, but I was awesome.
Nice. There's a weird trend on the podcast where I ask somebody to describe their current job and they simply say they love it. I'm like, no, I need details.
Yeah,
I need more details.
I always tell people I work for, I was like, you're going to have to fire me to get me out of this company. So.
Nice. Okay, now when you first signed on, the code checking Trailhead challenges was still this like Ruby on Rails version of the Node.js prototype that I'd written so very, very long ago. And it was basically a configurable REST call out that would stop if it ever saw a problem. Compare that to how your challenge checking is working now.
Yes. So you're exactly right. So it basically used the old version we call version 1. Some stuff still run on that. You essentially send your code that you've got in your org. We check against some Ruby code and make sure that everything we're looking for is correct. There were some issues with that. The big ones are it's not localizable. We can't give back localized error messages, which of course that's huge, important.
Yeah.
We also, we went for security. We want to do some different stuff to make it more sandboxable. And we wanted to give back different error messages all the time, because some people who know that when you run a hands-on challenge and you get an issue back, it's just a generic message. Hey, that didn't work. Please try something else. So we wanted to make something that was better for and more scalable for the future. So we kind of, I mean, it's no surprise or no secret that Salesforce is into microservices. So we were the first microservice on Trailhead. We developed this microservice. It's all now configurable. So you take your code that you got in your org, we run it against Salesforce, bring the results back, and we can actually display different messages based on what we find in there. So the nice thing about it is we also support different APIs, not just the REST API, but we can do tooling, we can do Heroku, we can do different APIs. And that was one of the things also. We want to be able to create content on different platforms. So we're not just a Salesforce learning platform, we're making learning easy on different platforms. So that was really huge. So it's much better now. We're still, trying to convert a lot of the a lot of the previous hands-on challenges to use this. So, gotcha. But there's always updates to it, and we've got a whole team that maintains that, and I'm part of that team. It's called Team Sriracha because we're the secret sauce of Trailhead. So,
I love that. I love that. And I just kind of want to throw this out because to me, it's sort of like interesting trivia because like in the early days, like you're kind of a Node guy, I'm kind of a Node guy, like Anna Perkins was kind of a Node guy, and then we had to like convert a bunch of stuff over to Ruby because that's what we had like official support for. But now with your structure, you can write challenges in JavaScript, correct?
Correct. Yep. Nice. In JavaScript, which is huge. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Now, one of the things that you built out fairly early was something called Trailbox. And we're going to, obviously we'll talk about it. It's like some internal tooling, but I think people will be interested to know like this is because clearly we're doing more than 4 badges a week now, right? Like
yes,
the volume is so big. So like, let's talk about like how some of that's getting supported. So what is Trailbox and like, what were your design goals there?
So when you first wrote this app, it got converted into Ruby. Essentially the code that evaluates if you configured your hands-on challenges correctly for your org was in a JSON file. So it's one giant line of code about 7,000 characters long. And I was really sick of trying to read, hundreds of lines of Ruby code as one line of JSON. Yeah. So I was like, there's got to be a better way. So as the want, and you're the same way, I know, I was bored I tend to write a lot of apps over Christmas break. I get really bored. So I wrote this app, and I did it out of necessity. I think a lot of stuff on Salesforce is out of necessity. So I wrote this app, you could log in, you could have you could see all your badges there. You could add units to it. You could add your hands-on challenges, and then you could run them right there. So it was a web-based interface for actually creating stuff. Now, over the years, Trailboxes, it's got integration with all kinds of external services, and it's crazy. But it's got security through different types of authentication. But it's kind of the tool that we use, that all of our hands-on challenge developers use to write code. So they all write it in the browser, and they can check the code against a solution org to make sure it runs correctly. And then when they're done with that, they push it to GitHub, our private GitHub repos where all our code's stored at, and then it gets put in the production pipeline. It's going real well. It's going real well. It's mainly used internal now, but as you know, with my Trailhead, there's talk about doing things externally for customers. So there are some people who want to actually write their own hands-on challenges for their own employees. So we'll see what happens on that. I'm not quite sure right now. So, but that was like the first thing I wrote out of necessity. What that was for.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And we keep going back to this, but like Trailhead year one, the content release cycle was something we could probably fit easily into a single spreadsheet. What does that look like now? Like what tooling is in place to maintain all of these different trails and units and modules?
Right. And you're exactly correct. That originally that was a spreadsheet, but then you figure out, if you start looking at what goes into a trail or a module or project, it's all the content, it's all the tags, it's all the levels, it's the, the background color, it's the image, all this like that. So that was all kept in a spreadsheet, and everybody's, it's a Google Doc, of course, or Google spreadsheet, but everybody's updating it, and it's out of date. I'm like, after about a year, I was like, why are we using spreadsheets? We can use Salesforce for free. So I finally convinced Sandeep to let me start working on this. So at Salesforce, we have multiple orgs, and one of the orgs that we use in engineering is called the Gus org. So I started working on an app that would work in the Gus org, and it was called the Release app, Trailhead Release app. So now we manage all of the release process out of this app. So when we have issues with certain content, we'll log our own bugs for it. The writers will fix it, and then those get pushed up in the production content pipeline. They get deployed to the site. So it's what the way we should be doing it. And now we have 3 developers work full time on this app. that they're just used to release, because the process, of course, as over time, as you know, all processes get more complex.
Right.
So there's more integration points and yada, yada, yada. So, but it's a great app. It runs inside Gus. It looks like a Gus app. And, it's all those same, features you get from any Salesforce app. So it was the way to go. And I'm glad Sandeep let me do it without me asking. I just kind of did it and said, here we go. That's kind of the way things worked. So
first of all, I love, there's so many times in evangelism / advocacy that the question is simply, should that really be a spreadsheet? Especially if we're Salesforce. Really, ask, does it need to be a spreadsheet, or should it be a spreadsheet? And I even did that to myself one time. Dave told me to start tracking all the blogs that were getting published and the metrics behind them and all this kind of stuff. And so I pull up a spreadsheet and I start entering it in manually whenever I remember to. And it was terrible. Nobody used it because it's always out of date. Yep. And, it tells you what you knew 2 weeks ago kind of thing. And I had that moment too. I'm like, why am I doing this in a spreadsheet when I've got a developer org sitting right here?
Yeah. And it's great with that because because once you start putting a spreadsheet, people are like, can I get a report out of this?
Right.
I don't want this person to see this column. So how do we do that too?
Right.
Oh my God.
God, if somebody would just build an app and put it in the cloud, it'd be so much easier.
I know. Yeah, I had the same problem. So.
And how much of the overall tooling that you're working with Trailhead is actually built on the Salesforce platform?
More and more. I mean, it's no surprise that we're trying to get more things integrated with the platform. So more and more stuff is we do a lot of things in a lot of our apps, we make calls into Gus to make sure, let's say we don't have multiple API names for the same module. So we have a module that's, has different names. That's kind of a unique thing. So we make sure that's not an issue, because early on in Trailhead, if we released 2 modules with the same API name, it would break everything and it caused havoc. I'm sure you remember that. It just caused havoc on the entire site. So we had to put all these checks in for, to make sure there's uniqueness. And now we have namespaces and all kinds of things. But we're getting more and more integrated into Salesforce core with that stuff. So. And, auth runs that way too. Security is running more of that. Permission sets, we're running those out of Salesforce also. We wanted to try to get more and more, are deeply embedded more with Salesforce core. And that's coming. Yeah.
Nice. Now, another project of, I think, yours, or at least you're central to it, it's sort of off to the side of Trailhead tooling, but there's Trail Tracker out there on AppExchange. What features does Trail Tracker give somebody?
Trail Tracker, I think it's maybe the most installed app ever.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we've got so many users on that. So many orgs are installed in that. It was actually Adam Tormer and I don't know why we started this app, to tell you the truth. I can't remember how when you start something, you're like, what was the reason for this? What do we do this for? But we're like, it'd be great if we could report on our company's users and their Trailhead progress. That'd be great, because we can't really write a report and stick that in Trailhead because the company couldn't see it. There's no personalization inside Trailhead for a company. It's like, it'd be great. Here's how everything starts off. It'd be great if we could see our own users and what they're doing in Trailhead. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So Adam Tormer and I, who everybody loves, we started building this, and we started building it, and then we thought, let's make this a managed package and put it out there on AppExchange. And man, we have huge amount of users on there. Huge amount. So we wrote this, and we're making changes to it and everything like that. And it's actually a really good product. We have really good reviews on it. Some of the setup's kind of interesting because there's a whole Salesforce integration piece, and it runs as a single user for all your users in your org. And it calls the Trailhead API on a daily basis and grabs all your data for all your users on Trailhead, and it actually just upserts it into your org so you can run reports off it, you can run workflows off it, whatever you want to do. Just data at that point. So it's a really popular AppExchange app. It's going to be updated some more. We're going to make more progress to it because people love it. And so we want to make more personalizations like that. But we have a team who's just doing that. I'm kind of like you, where I'm really good at doing 80% of the work. And then let someone do the documentation and the cleanups like that, So more of a hacker thing. So, and it kind of came in the same thing with work.com. When work.com came in, we had some Trail Tracker aspects of that also. So I wrote some stuff for work.com so that way companies could see, what badges their users had completed or trail mix had completed. So there's some Lightning Web components inside work.com that hit Trail Tracker as well.
Gotcha. And this integrates with My Trailhead too. So they've got custom.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
Got
And that's kind of how it gets, a little more confusing is, regular Salesforce versus My Trailhead and stuff like that. There's all these permissions that go around. So that's always interesting to do that kind of work.
So, like, for instance, when corporate emails me because they wanted me to do a Trailhead certification like 3 weeks ago, but I failed to do it, is Trail Tracker the one ratting me out?
You get that same email, don't you? I get those all the time as well.
Don't we get a pass? Feels like we should get a pass.
Well, speaking of feeling we get a pass, it's funny because people are like, oh, Salesforce, Tread, you can do all these great things. And as you and I both know, we're using the exact same APIs as Salesforce employees that customers use for their application. We don't have any kind of black box into it. We're the same APIs, same constraints, same limits, everything like that. So we don't get any special treatment, unfortunately. But I think in that case, that Astro's Trail Tracker or Astro's Course Tracker, I think it's a custom integration that we have for Trailhead. Yeah, I don't think that's mine. So,
well, now to put an asterisk on that, because you mentioned the Trailhead API, but we don't have and don't plan to have a Trailhead public API, right?
I don't believe so, but that's above my pay raise.
Gotcha. That's an Adam question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll take that up with Sandeep in a future episode.
Okay. Yeah. I would love to. I mean, there's everything in Salesforce, it's API first. So we're kind of extracting a lot of this stuff now. And we only build APIs now. And Trailhead Web integrates with these APIs. So that's how a lot of stuff works for authoring, integration, and content. So like that, they're all API based.
So one of the things I love about Trail Tracker is that Metals, the first prototype, which was just Bootstrap and Node.js running on Canvas. It was
awesome.
It was the simplest design. I created a search bar, and then creative design was. I do have this tendency to create things either so simple or so ugly that other people feel like they have to completely redo it, and I'm fine with that. Sure. But that version, one of the things I threw in there to kind of show how we could have the community, interact with this was a leaderboard. And the leaderboard was, anybody goes back and sees the old videos of Metals, the leaderboard is the most fake thing in that prototype. It's literally just an HTML table put up somewhere. And I think it was the first thing that Sandeep and I were like, we're not doing this. It makes no sense to do a leaderboard in year one when we only have, so many badges and we have no idea how many people are going to use this thing. So thank you, because it's Trail Tracker is kind of like that. We finally got that plus a whole bunch of other stuff, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, there was a couple people in the community. They made their own leaderboards. Remember that? And they would scrape Trailhead Web to find out who was doing what. Yeah, and that was funny because we could watch them in the logs just scraping our site all the time.
But and then they shake their fist at you when you change the CSS.
Yeah, exactly. I did that too. I did some things like that too. I scraped some internal tools like that. But on the aspect of a leaderboard, I kind of did that. I was actually I was flying home from Dreamforce one year when I was on Trailhead, probably the second year of Dreamforce. And I really wanted a leaderboard also. But and that's when the streaming API was really big. So I made this app that it had a map of the world. And when you would complete a badge, it would stream that out to the topic and it would pick it up on the map and it would zoom into your part of the map and say, this person completed this badge right now. And it would, and the next person would do it, it would zoom over to their part, and then you could replay everything. And I thought that was so super cool. But the problem is it means you'd have to have everything in Salesforce, and we didn't have everything then. But it was really neat. I'm into leaderboards also and the visualization of data, so that was pretty cool.
Got it. Nice. Now, I want to put a pin on Trail Tracker and to make it clear that it's a Labs app and it's totally free, right?
Yes, it's totally free. Correct.
Okay. Perfect. So any new apps or tools that are currently on your horizon? Is there that one thing that you're like, what would be cool if?
Not me and not for Trailhead, because now Trailhead, well, when you're small, it's easy to make something and make a big impact. Now we're a huge team.
Right.
And we're all working on small little bits of stuff. So we're all about microservices. Gotcha. So we've got a lot of internal things working. We're I don't want to say overworked, but there's so much stuff to do in Trailhead engineering right now, because there's a lot of great things we want to roll out to users, because we want to do that. So there's a lot of great stuff, but probably stuff I can't talk about right now. Okay. But there's a lot of great stuff coming. Don't get me wrong. We're doing all kinds of fun stuff. So
nice. Always good to have a good safe harbor.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do understand Trailhead is something of a family affair for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, and actually my son-in-law, he was when the pandemic hit, he quit his job. He was doing lawn care in Florida in the summer heat. And he's like, I want to do this Trailhead thing. I want to get a job in Salesforce. So he did Trailhead for about, I don't know, 6 months, and I helped him out. We went over a lot of stuff, and he actually got a job at Traction on Demand last Thanksgiving as a pre-sales engineer. So it worked out real great for him. He did it all on Salesforce. I mean, all on Trailhead, learned Salesforce by himself. Can totally be done. He got a great job. He almost tripled his salary that he was making before. So he was happy. And now his wife, my daughter, is doing the exact same thing. She's a veteran and a firefighter. And she's like, I don't want to do this firefighting thing in Florida anymore. And so she's real young. And she's like, I'm going to start doing it too. So now she's a ranger, and she's got a couple super badges under her belt. And she's in the process of interviewing as well. And then I have another son, and he's up to be a ranger right now as well. So I don't know. But the bad thing about it, if we ever go under, which, I'm not sure if that's going to happen, my whole family will be out of business and we'll be out of luck. So yeah, in the courthouse.
I think you'll probably figure it out. And, and also I'm crossing my fingers, but I still continue to make the joke to Sandeep that I don't think this Trailhead thing's a fad anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's got legs. I think it's got legs.
It might work out.
Yeah. It might actually work out.
Well, I mean, the best part about it is, and the best thing about it is, you're literally changing people's lives. I mean, literally changing their lives. There's so many stories of people who were doing something else. They hated it. What was the one lady, her family had a cotton business, and she was in the field picking cotton in South Texas. And now she's like CIO or something like that. It's some crazy people, all these jobs that veterans are falling into after they get out of the military. It's just, it makes you almost cry sometimes about how life change it is on some of these people. We're so humbled about what we're doing. We feel it's a privilege for us to help people do this kind of stuff and change their lives. So everybody, I mean, we start off all our internal team meetings with slides from the community, people tweeting things about how it changed their lives. And we always recognize people who have had their life changed by Trailhead. So it's a fantastic job. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. I mean, one of my quotes is always, Trailhead was created for the trailblazers. And it's like that first, those early years, in my mind, it was always like, how are we going to get adoption internally and get teams to work with this thing and move docs to it and stuff like that. And it turned out not so much of a problem because the trailblazers were so enthusiastic about it that everybody wanted to be in on it so that they could help these people do these things that they're now very, very excited about. So, I'll say it 100 times, there's no way Trailhead would be where it is right now if it wasn't for the trailblazers themselves.
Yeah. And you look at people like, I'll give you Chris Duarte. You see how excited she is at all the conferences that talk about Trailhead and to present stuff. She's honestly like that 110% of the time.
She is.
She is exactly the way you see her. Yeah.
Can confirm. Yeah.
I mean, everybody who works on Trailhead is all about training and empowering people to make a better life. Everybody.
Yeah. And that's our show. Now, before we go, I did ask after Jeff's favorite non-technical hobby. And I will just warn you ahead of time. There will be llamas.
So we have a small ranch here. So I have alpacas and llamas like that, but it's kind of around that. But woodworking, I started doing a lot of woodworking.
Really?
Right. So my family used to own a brewery. We had a brewery from 2016 to 19. We had a brewery. My wife ran most of it. My son was the brewer, all kinds like that. So we sold that, and I was like, oh, well, I only have one job now. What do I do now? So this is before the pandemic started, about a couple months before it started, I started woodworking, and now I'm really, really into it. And so we bought a new house, and luckily it's a farmhouse style house. And so I'm making a lot of furniture for it. And I put a spreadsheet together a couple of weeks ago about how much money I've spent so far. And I'm not going to tell you how much it is, but it took me a week or two before I showed it to my wife how much I'd actually spent so far on tools. So, but let's just let you know that if you want to build your own furniture, it's actually cheaper to buy the furniture than it is to buy the tools to make the furniture and make the furniture. So, but it's a great, it keeps me sane. Because you got to have something to balance this computer stuff all the time. You've got to be able to get away and do whatever. If it's hikes in the woods, if it's going and volunteering, if it's taking care of cats or dogs, whatever. You've got to have something to balance it out. And people are like, well, don't you want to use CNC? I'm like, I don't want to use a CNC to cut wood. Last thing I want to do is sit down at a computer. I can use my hands and do stuff. That's probably my hobby right now. So yeah.
Nice. Tell me about your llamas.
We have 3 alpacas. Their names are Chupaca, Alpacachino, and then Professor Potato Salad. And we're Fancy Alpaca Ranch on Instagram. So we have that there. And then we have a llama. We bought a llama went to Kentucky, got a llama. Other than South Florida, so it's a little warm for them, so we keep them sheared. So we bought a llama named Newton, and so now we've had him like 6 months or so, and so that our kind of life revolves around our llamas and our alpacas. And now we've got eight chickens. We had 10, but we had a snake, and I had to kill a snake. And anyways, so but it's an interesting life now to be an alpaca rancher.
I want to thank Jeff for the great conversation and information, and as always, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for getting us to episode 100. Now, if you want to learn more about this show, head on over to developer.salesforce.com/podcast, where you can hear old episodes, see the show notes, and have links to your favorite podcast service. Thanks again, everybody. I'll talk to you next week.